Trying to boost your logistics performance sometimes feels like juggling. So this week I'm going to share my top 10 tips to boost your logistics performance. Coming right up. So this week I'm going to share 10 tips. How have I picked those 10 tips? I get asked a lot by people, what's the right sort of thing to focus on to improve my logistics performance? And these are probably the most common 10 that I can come up with, the 10 that really help boost performance. And how do I know that? Well, if you've been on this channel for a while, you know I've been consulting to companies all over the world for about 30 years now. And these are the 10 that seem to offer the most boost in performance. So I'm going to run through 10. I'm going to keep the best till last. And right at the end, I'll share some additional resources for you to help you get better results. Apologies for glancing down, but a whole bunch of notes here to make sure I don't forget anything for you. Okay, so what's number one? You might be doing some of these already, but I'm sure you're going to find a couple of these tips useful. Inventory management. Oh, you'd be saying, surely people know how to do inventory management these days. There's a lot of companies still not getting it right. And if you're concerned about your inventory management, maybe you're getting lots of stock outs, maybe you've got a lot of excess stock, start off with the simple stuff, do your ABC analysis, but don't do it just by product and product group, do it by line item as well. And then start checking things like reorder points and minimum order quantities and pack sizes as well. So many companies that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, they're still getting that wrong. And I'll throw in another one, master data. So many people still don't have accurate master data, which is vital for managing your inventory properly, managing your storage and so on. Okay, number two. Transport fleet optimization. If you're running your own transport fleet, and if you've got more than about 6 vehicles, you ought to be using some sort of software to help optimize the use of that fleet. Routing and scheduling software, it's generally called. That's going to help you optimize all the delivery times, the delivery windows, the capacity of the vehicles, the time utilization, and you're going to see some benefits. If you've got a fleet of 20 or 30 vehicles, absolutely you should be doing it, and you're going to get some massive savings by doing that. I should add that there are videos on all of these specific topics on the channel, so just use the search feature to look for them. But right now, number 3, supply chain strategy. I think the last time I surveyed on this, something like 40% of companies still didn't have a documented supply chain strategy. And I don't mean it has to be war and peace. Very often it's just a one-pager which identifies the very clear objectives, the enablers, the KPIs, the targets for the supply chain. And why is that so important? Because it gets everybody across all different functions in the organization focused on the right outcomes. So that is really, really important. Supply chain strategy. Get everybody on the same page, heading towards the same results. Warehouse design. We get asked here at Logistics Bureau a lot to help people with warehouse designs. It's very often because they're moving to a new facility, a greenfield site, and they need to work out the size of the facility and the layouts and so on. It may be that they're going to lease a new facility and they're trying to understand what size it should be. It may be even trying to improve an existing facility. But one of the things that people get wrong all of the time is they find the facility first, or they find the land first before working out exactly what they need. And what do I mean by that? When you're designing a warehouse, you design from the inside out. You look at the storage requirements, the handling requirements, you work out the footprint and the ideal height, and then you know the size of the warehouse to go and look for. Without doing that, you're generally going to end up with the wrong size facility. And I've seen some horrendous results over the years. So make sure you get the sequence of events right. Number 5, logistics outsourcing. If you're thinking of finding a new 3PL, going to the market to find a new partner, one of the things you've got to do is to allow plenty of time to do that. If you can, 5 or 6 months. It's quite a lengthy process to go through documenting your needs, going out to the market, finding potential partners, going through a tendering process, request for a proposal, whatever you're doing, going through the evaluation. That's quite a lengthy process, and I still see a lot of people rushing it. 3 months is rushing it. Think 4, 5, 6 months if you can. You might even want to think about different techniques of finding those 3PL partners. And here at Logistics Bureau, we utilise a process that we call collaborative tendering, which is really good. We find it ends up with a much better result. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, reach out to me and I'll tell you how afterwards. Number 6, freight tendering. Freight costs are going up all over the place. Very often people want to go to the market, go out to tender again to try to reduce their freight costs. It's not always about the freight rate. What do I mean by the freight rate? The cost per tonne, the cost per pallet, the cost per carton. Very often it's actually about the task that you're outsourcing. And what I say to people is go through a sort of a process mapping exercise from start to finish, all the interfaces where you're dealing with your freight carriers, and work out exactly what service you should be buying from them, the activities that you're asking them to perform, the type of rate structures that you're paying, the sort of vehicles that they're using. And just by that process, you could very easily identify lots of errors. I've seen some really easy quick wins where companies have been asking their freight providers to perform a certain task, and they've been forcing the freight carrier to incur extra costs by what they're asking for. It can be how the freight is presented, it could be times of day for pickups, could be anything. So there's lots of simple ways to try and reduce your freight cost. It's generally not about attacking the rate, it's about making the task simpler. So that was freight tendering. Number 7, performance management. Do you have the right KPIs in place? Oh, I've seen mountains of KPIs over the years. My number 1 tip would be to keep it simple. At each level in the organisation, I recommend having about 3 KPIs. So maybe the CEO is going to see 3 supply chain logistics KPIs, and so on, cascading down. Obviously, as you're getting to the warehouse manager and supervisors, they're going to have very specific KPIs for their areas of responsibility, but not everybody needs to see 100. Try to keep it simple. So KPI is really important. Make sure also that you understand the targets that you should be trying to achieve. It's all well and good saying we want to have, we're going to measure our pick rates or we're going to measure our inventory accuracy. But unless you know what good looks like, how do you know if you're performing well or not? So benchmarking is a really good way to do that. Benchmarking is not that simple. Just reach out if you need some help with that. But it's really valuable to know how you stand in the marketplace, how your performance compares to your competitors and like industry. And that enables you really to understand what's possible, what's the size of the prize potentially. So the right KPIs and benchmarking. Let me get my fingers right, 8. Distribution network. Yes, lots of people still have problems with distribution networks. They tend to have grown up over time. That's part of the problem that I see. And if you're not checking your distribution network every couple of years, giving it a little bit of a health check, it's probably misaligned. Why? Because you probably had changes in your customer base, in your product range, your channels to market, and it's probably not as efficient as it could be. And you end up with customers being serviced from the wrong facilities. You're holding the wrong products in different facilities. Now you can end up with puddling, as they call it, puddling of product, where you get much higher stock levels in certain facilities than others. And then you've got to have transfers. It can upset freight costs into facility and out to customer. So a bit of a health check on your distribution network is well worthwhile, and particularly if there have been changes in your distribution network. So have a look at that. Number 9, sales and operations planning. I was going to say most companies have nailed this. They haven't. Most companies think they have. And they have some form of sales and operations planning in place, but some is very rudimentary. It's either not a complete process, it can be missing core functions and engagement. And let me give you an example of that. One of the hardest things in a commercial organization is getting people to own the sales forecast. If you're still got problems with that, your sales and operations planning process is probably flawed. So do look at the sort of monthly cycle of your sales and operations planning. Who's involved, what decisions are taking place at the various meetings through the month. and the outcome of it particularly. Are you getting a good result from it? It's not hard to fix. So do have a look at your S&OP. And then finally, number 10. What do you reckon number 10 is? It's my favorite. Number 10 is customer and product profitability. Again, a huge opportunity area for most organizations. Most organizations are very good at measuring performance in aggregate. So you might know your supply chain costs as a percentage of sales, your logistics costs, warehousing costs, transport costs, and so on. Not a lot of organizations know their cost as a percentage of sales or their actual costs per unit, down to per order, per item, per customer, per region. Knowing that is an absolute goldmine of finding opportunity in your supply chain. Imagine if I'm not trying to do a product placement here, I'll hide the brand. Imagine I'm selling these, by boxes of 100 into a metro area, and I'm selling little packets of 5 into a rural area. The cost of actually getting that product to the customer varies considerably. It's known as cost to serve. If you don't understand that and what margin remains, so every time you're selling these, you've got gross margin applicable to the product. You then start peeling off all the costs of servicing your customers. You've got to make sure that there's still some margin remaining on that by the time it gets to the customer. And without understanding that profitability analysis, you just don't know. And I don't want to scare you here, but I have seen organizations with 78% of their customer orders making a loss. On average, most commercial organizations are losing money on 10% of their orders. And it's not hard to fix. That's the beauty of it. The challenge is identifying it first. So do have a look at customer profitability, product profitability. That one particularly, if you want a hand, just let me know. Okay, so there's my top 10. If you want some additional information on those, do look around the channel, use the search feature. There are more detailed videos on all of these. But if you really want some help in your organization fixing some of these issues and moving on and getting much better logistics performance, just reach out. You can book a call with me directly. I'll put a link down below the video in the description and the comments. Jump on there and we'll have a chat. Glad to help, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.